皆さん、こんにちは。みーさチャンネル資格ハンター編です。最新の英語ニュースを読み上げますので、英語の試験勉強やスキルアップにご活用ください。
U.S. Senate Republicans block debate on domestic terrorism measure. May 26, 2022, 4:29 p.m. VOA News. Activists join Senate Democrats outside the Capitol to demand action on gun control legislation after a gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers at a Texas elementary school this week, in Washington, May 26, 2022. Washington. U.S. Senate Republicans on Thursday blocked attempts by Democratic lawmakers to start debate on a measure to combat domestic terrorism as the two parties spar over how best to control gun violence. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives approved the measure last week following a mass shooting earlier this month at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, in which a white teenage gunman is accused of specifically targeting and killing 10 black people. Democrats attempt to start debate on the domestic terrorism measure, coming 2 days after a teenage gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers at an elementary school in Texas, failed on a 47-47 vote, far short of the 60 needed to overcome a Republican filibuster. Democrats, who have failed for years to overcome Republican opposition to tighter controls on gun sales and background checks on gun buyers, are making another effort to compromise with Republicans on gun control legislation in the aftermath of the Texas rampage carried out by an 18-year-old high school dropout. There was no indication that Republican senators were willing to abandon their opposition, with many of them saying that the gun-buying rights of law-abiding citizens would be impinged upon if background checks were initiated. Republicans say the domestic terrorism bill doesn't place enough emphasis on combating offenses committed by groups on the far left. New federal offices. The legislation would have set up offices at the FBI and at the Homeland Security and Justice Departments to focus on domestic terrorism. Democratic supporters of the legislation said the offices would better prepare the federal government to take preventive measures against domestic terrorism. Some Republicans said the government already has the authority to track such activity, making the new legislation unnecessary. File Senator Marco Rubio, Republican Florida, speaks during a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on Capitol Hill in Washington, September 14, 2021. The problem we have is that we have a bunch of people who define anyone they disagree with as terrorists, as extremists, said Republican Senator Marco Rubio, according to Politico. We've reached a point in America now where the term extremist is applied too liberally to people, that there's deep concern about how these entities will be used. That's the concern that people have. File Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat, New York, meets with reporters at the Capitol April 5, 2022. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said that for some Republicans, no amount of gun violence, whether it's domestic terrorism, a school shooting, a neighborhood shooting or something else, will ever convince them to take any action. Some information for this report came from the Associated Press.
以上で、今回のみーさチャンネルは終了です。最後までご視聴いただきまして、ありがとうございました。よろしければ、高評価とチャンネル登録をよろしくお願いします。